Interesting.
Welcome to a new episode of the Animal Liberation Hour, where we bring you inspiring stories from revolutionaries who are changing the world for all animals. My name is Shriya, and today I had the immense privilege of chatting with Stephanie Redcross, the founder of Vegan Mainstream. Stephanie was motivated to create this business as part of her mission to build a pro-vegan world. Using her expertise working in marketing in the corporate world, Stephanie mentors up-and-coming, aspiring, ethical vegan entrepreneurs and empowers them to disrupt industries that exploit animals and are currently dominating the market. Stephanie envisions a world where ethical and moral businesses are the norm and will be a foundational part of our journey to a just vegan future. There is so much in this conversation that warrants critical thought, and I hope you listeners appreciate some of the nuanced perspectives that Stephanie offers. Before we get into this episode, I want to remind you that the Animal Liberation Hour is a project of Animal Activism Mentorship. AAM is a free multinational program that helps aspiring animal rights activists find their voice in the movement and take their activism to a whole nother level. From one-on-one mentorships to free workshops and trainings to this podcast, AAM seeks to empower humans to fight the good fight for all earthlings. For more information, visit animalactivismmentorship.com and follow AAM on social media. That's Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Animal Activism Mentorship. You can also keep up with the Animal Liberation Hour on AAM socials as well. Animal Activism Mentorship is so honored and proud to be fueled by Farm Animal Rights Movement. And now for my conversation with the brilliant Stephanie Redcross. Thank you, Stephanie, for taking the time out of your busy day to chat with us. We're so excited to hear all about your story and the incredible work that you're doing.
Thank you for having me. This is such a wonderful opportunity, and I'm really excited about diving into the topics and the questions that you provided.
Oh, yeah, I know. I think these are questions that often come up within the space of effective activism and different avenues to pursue that. So I really love the work that you're doing with mentoring and empowering up-and-coming ethical vegan businesses. But before we get into how you embarked on that career path, tell us how you made that first connection with veganism and animal rights and how that's fueled your current trajectory with what you do.
Yeah, I have to almost admit that I didn't have that connection initially. I think for a lot of us as vegans, sometimes when we come to this lifestyle, we come to it with health, we come to it with recommendations from friends, and I came to it really kind of having a little bit of a health, I'd say, wake-up call, but I wasn't there on the animal rights side. I really just didn't have that knowledge, that information, that experience. And I think maybe it was just the circle that I was in. You know, I was a senior in college when I kind of got the wake-up call. And while it took me some time to become vegan, because, I started down a very traditional path of like, oh, I'll take this out. I'll stop eating this. I'll stop doing that. But I had an amazing opportunity when I moved to Connecticut where I started hanging out with more vegans, actually hanging out with people who did what I did and was interested in what I did, not just the communities and the people that I knew before. And when I started to hang out with vegans, I started to get that education. I started to understand what really happens to animals. And it sounds so odd to say that now, but there's so much that is hidden from consumers, hidden from individuals. So therefore, when you think you're going vegetarian and you think you're doing something great, then someone kind of pulled me to the side and said, do you know what really happens to the female cows? Do you know what happens to the male cows? Like, have you thought about this process? And you start to then, the light bulb goes off because you start to realize, wait a minute, this means, for there to be milk, that means there has to be a calf. wait a minute, what happened to that calf? And now your brain start to absorb that information. And for me, it was kind of a little bit of a shock. It was almost a little bit of a let's sit down moment, because I didn't realize what I was contributing to. And once I realized what I was contributing to, what was amazing about this person that kind of had this discussion with me is they also empowered me. They helped me understand that not only from the foods that I choose, and by kind of going vegan and making that claim, that could make a change, but also the things I do every day, my lifestyle could impact it too. So it wasn't just my plate, it was where I donate my money. It is the communities and groups that I interact with. And I really started to see that opportunity to do more with my kind of vegan ethics, and also make sure that I was a voice for the voiceless.
Yeah, that's a very beautiful and organic story. And of course, not everybody comes into it with the same motivation, but once you start learning about it, you become more aware and you want to educate everyone. You want everyone to know what's actually happening. And I guess that leads me to another question that I've often been grappling with, and I think it's something that a lot of people within either animal rights or environment justice, climate justice, any social justice cause in general, is that sometimes, people know, like they don't want to see slaughterhouse videos because they know what they're gonna, they know what they're going to see. There is an expectation of what happens. So that there is that awareness, so to speak. And we often talk about, if we educate people, if we just tell them what happens, they'll make that connection, they'll change. And that isn't the case. That often isn't the case for ourselves, who are now vegan and activists in whatever capacity. And so we might be able to resonate with the idea that just simply telling somebody it's not going to make that change. But what do you think it is about those who make that connection and those who don't make that connection? Like they have the awareness, they know what's happening, but they're not willing to make the switch in behavior to reflect that.
I don't know. I think it's a couple of different things, and I don't want to pretend like I know it all. But I could definitely give some.
I think if we all knew the answer to that, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right?
Absolutely. But I think there's probably maybe 3 or 4 things that are going on, that's happening. Number one, I think it's how that conversation starts. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not always in a inviting and open space. Sometimes it's in a place where a person almost feels a little bit attacked. So therefore they have to kind of get into the stance. And I don't want to put the blame on the person who's driving the awareness. That's not where I'm going here. But what I'm saying is, when we think about that connection and trying to get more people to make that connection, the question is, what can we do as activists to create the right environment so that we can have some of those deeper discussions? Because no one wants to admit at times that they've just been blind to it, that they hadn't thought about it. And most of us, especially most of us that are very compassionate about other things, it's almost a little bit painful to realize that our compassion didn't extend where it should have. Especially for many of us who have companion animals, it hurts to be like, wait a minute, I didn't make that connection. Mm-hmm. And that pain a little bit is hard for people to digest, especially in a public environment or with someone that you're not close with. So I really think it's a question of how do we create these a little bit safe spaces so that people can ask questions and not feel like, was that a silly question or a stupid question kind of thing. So I think that's one of the pieces of it. And then I think the other piece is that we have to remember that change does happen over time. Yes, we hear about people who watched a documentary and they were like, I'm never doing it, or I'm not going to do this. But I feel like sometimes when you peel back and talk to that person, they might have been ready for a change. And unfortunately, they watched a vegan movie or an animal rights movie, and they were able to kind of move that change in that direction. But I feel for a lot of people, they're not ready for change. They really see their life is going well, or they're struggling in so many ways that the change that we're bringing to them, or the new perspective that we're bringing to them, they just can't digest it, even if it would give them $1 gazillion, even if it resolved all the problems they've had in their relationships, in their lives, like as an example, they just couldn't receive it. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I think we have to realize that we need multiple touch points to change people. We need multiple opportunities for them to change, and we need different ways. And I really have seen some great work really in the community, especially animal rights community, where you see more diverse messaging, where you see some things that need to be a little bit of shock, because sometimes we need a wake-up call. And then also seeing things where we mirror technology with that discovery, seeing some of those like, virtual, headsets that you can sit on and you can kind of walk around and look at what the process is. That's really interesting because it helps a person who likes technology, who's interested in that, to now see what we're trying to get them to see in a world that they're already comfortable with. So I think exploring that is something that can help people make that switch. And then the last thing I really think where people struggle is that for many of us, we don't make the connection between the things we're already passionate about and how veganism really aligns with it. I think that's been one of the biggest challenges with things like with about climate change and the environment and sustainability. Sometimes for, especially me as a vegan, I'm like, what do you mean you don't understand how, the slaughterhouses are contributing? It's kind of a little bit of a shock to me, but I really feel like people aren't connecting their causes. They're really compartmentalizing it. And if we can get people to kind of break them up and start to see where they overlap, and I think veganism is such an amazing vehicle for change, because much of what we ask people to do and much what we ask people to see, it not only can make a better place and a better world for animals, but it can make us better as like humans. Because what's happened for me is I see the world differently. I treat people differently. I talk to people differently. So therefore, it's not just my food. It's like, well, wait a minute, Stephanie. I can't ask someone to be compassionate in this realm. I'm not compassionate to them when I talk to them. It's gotta spread around. And I think some of those realizations and maybe incorporating some of those tools are ways that we can maybe unlock the door.
Yeah, and I think it's easier to do when you're in this kind of a calm space and, we're thinking rationally, logically, but when we're in that heated moment and all of the atrocities that are happening and you're just like, why don't you get this? Like, you got to do this now. And it's like, I understand where make that switch now agitation comes from when one is trying to convey this message, but also knowing human nature and no one really wants to be told that they aren't good people, but it's an interesting space, and it comes with any movement that is looking to elevate an oppressed group, where the idea of viewing them as worthy of rights, worthy of respect, worthy of just moral consideration is just like a blasphemous idea for some reason, whereas to us who've made that connection, it seems like a no-brainer. So there are a lot of nuances within that. And as you're navigating all of this, you've made that switch, how did you decide that your calling was to help ethical businesses, and how did what inspired Vegan Mainstream to be created from your own passions and your form of activism, so to speak?
Yeah, I think a lot of what inspired me or started me down this journey was first a little bit of just through my perspective. I come with a corporate background, come from a, line of entrepreneurs in my family. And from that, I've seen how people run businesses, see how businesses succeed, just studying it and being in that mix. It was just disappointing when I would see a vegan business, got to go out of business. And for many of them, they were going out of business for very basic, business challenges, where a person just didn't have the training on the business side. They didn't have a mentor in place. There weren't a lot of services out there to support businesses. So therefore, they didn't feel like they had someone who was going to represent them well in the marketplace if they did hire them. So the idea of, is there help that is needed? And I wasn't sure if I could be that help at first, honestly. I really just felt like maybe I can contribute. Maybe this is just something I can do, even locally, or a couple of places that I've gone to, or a couple, restaurants and stores and stuff like that. But what I found is over time, as I kind of expanded my thoughts around what does help mean, I started to realize that it would be an amazing thing to have my career aligned with my veganism. As opposed to, I kind of saw my veganism a little bit separately. You see it a little bit private. You see it a little bit of your activism as this thing that you do often, after work, on the weekends. And I started to kind of question myself to say, can those things be together? Because the reality for most of us is we spend most of our time working. We spend most of our time at work, especially in a traditional sense, or, many of us are kind of, even the culture that many of us are raised in. The idea is that, you're going to be working 8-hour days, which most of us don't work now, but, that concept. And it's like, what if I was working 8-hour days and that work contributed to the movement? And that kind of aha moment, that light bulb going off for me started giving me an opportunity to consider the idea that my career could be inclusive of it. And for me, I wasn't a chef. Like, I like cooking, love food, but I just wasn't a person that was going to be a chef, or a person that was going to make these amazing pastries. I'm going to be the person on the other side eating and tasting. So I had to figure out if there was a place for me. There was a place for me to support the movement with my skills when it came to business structure, marketing, sales, training, and so forth. And I just took a leap of faith and said, maybe they'll try it. Maybe they'll like it. Maybe it'll work. And I know not everyone's in that place. Not everyone has that opportunity. So I'm not necessarily telling people to just leap and quit jobs or anything like that. I think there needs to be a plan. And if I had to do it all over again, I would have a step-by-step plan. But I did take a leap of faith because I really believed in it so strongly. And I'm so glad I did, because now, 11, 12 years later, I can see how much the world has changed and how much that help was needed on these business sides. And also, there's so many more people like me out here now, which is so exciting and so amazing, because that means we can have more and more businesses out here leading innovation and also displacing products that harm animals.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because and I love that you touched on how you could incorporate your values in your career, and not everyone has that or sees an opportunity to do that. Say they're working a tech job 9 to 5, and you beautifully brought in that element of technology and how that could be a tool for activism and bridging that gap of keeping your work separate from issues that you care about. So, and yeah, I understand that not everyone also has the opportunities to work for a traditional animal rights organization as well. So having these creative ways where they can align their everyday financial support with the causes that they truly value is really a powerful way to empower empower oneself in knowing that they can be a part of the change that they want to see and that they believe in. So do you have any advice for those who might be in these non-animal animal rightsy, unquotes, jobs to implement activism in their workplaces? How can they incorporate activism within their day-to-day?
Absolutely. And if I'm going to add one small thing to it,
Please
I hope
do.
it's okay.
Please. This is all about you. This is an amazing discussion. Anything that you want to share, go for it.
Thank you. I would add two things to that, because I think for some people, they're not ready to start a business. That's just not where they are in their lives. And also, they may not be passionate about it. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of people, I mentioned the idea that when we think about volunteering, often for organizations, for really groups that we're passionate about, we think about volunteering our time. We think about showing up and being there for X amount of hours or X amount of days. Mm-hmm. And one thing I want to maybe impress upon your listeners is that sometimes when we volunteer, we can volunteer skills. So therefore, if you're a person that knows how to build a website, volunteer to help build the website for that organization. Volunteer to help them with their systems. Volunteer if you're an HR person to say, you know what, I'm going to come in here and help you get your payroll and everything straight. Because I think often we forget that our contributions can be bigger than time, and our contributions can be so impactful when we can use the skills that we actually use every day in these other jobs. Like, why not help an organization or a group move forward by volunteering that? And I don't want people to, take on more than they can handle, but the idea is often coming in, working for 1 hour, 2 hours, even 3 hours, and supporting somebody can really make a difference for even for small organizations and even for small businesses. So I always mention that to people, because I think they forget about that opportunity. But in your own job, in your own role, there's a lot of different ways to kind of bring that message in. There's a lot of different opportunities. Now, depending on the size of the organization, depending on what the focus for the organization is, it may look different. But what I always tell people is, especially for businesses normally have specific goals. Most businesses have specific things that they want to accomplish in a year. And what I have people do, especially if you can put that business hat on or that strategy hat on, is to think about, well, what is important to the company that I work with, and how does veganism align with it? So if it's a company that's trying to get into more support for nonprofits, if it's a company that's trying to make sure that they're building that side of what they do, then find out who's in charge of making those decisions on what organizations they're going to donate to, what organizations they're going to partner with, those organizations that they're going to bring staff to, and work with them to see if you can get one of the animal rights organizations on that list. See what you can do, because often it's really just a question of who they should support. And often most organizations want to incorporate their employees' recommendations. So I find it's a great way to help make sure that money that was going to be spent in checks that were going to be written, let's get those checks written towards the organizations that we believe in. The other thing is, I really believe in being a kind of beacon of hope in your organization. And I know it gets frustrating at times. I remember when I worked in corporate America, it used to be annoying when I'd go to events and activities and there'd just be random food and random things on the table, or even things that would just annoy me. But what I had to do is I had to find my place. I had to figure out a way to contribute. Now, I'm a little bit ultra positive. I know not everyone walks the same walk I walk, so I'm not asking everyone to be me. But what I had to do is I had to find a way to align the activities. So therefore, if we had meetings, I would start bringing stuff in, like banana bread, and I would bake it. And it was really interesting because, I'm a little corporate girl, and for me to bring in banana bread, folks were like, what? What's going on? I got to try this banana bread. And I think it was just even the fact that I made it.
That you made a banana bread, yeah. I also love that. I think banana bread is having its moment, and it's a very long moment.
It really is. So I think helping people see those opportunities, if you have a culture that's a bagel in the morning culture, bring in some vegan cream cheese, try to make sure there's some vegan bagels there. And not so much because it's a battle between, but more because what it does is it opens up or introduces veganism. And I know it's a light touch, but it does it in a way that incorporates it with someone's everyday life. It incorporates it with their everyday kind of experience. And if they're seeing you do it, same thing. If there's brands that you like, use them. Show them proud. Have that vegan mug, vegan coffee company that you get your coffee from, that you believe in because they have sustainable practices. Mm-hmm. Use that mug. Use that opportunity so it can be a conversation starter. If you're going to give gifts to people, especially since we're going into the holiday season, offer gifts to fellow employees or Secret Santas or whatever thing is going on. Try to just keep incorporating it in and finding ways that people can enjoy veganism. They can enjoy this movement and understand that, yes, there's some change that needs to happen. Yes, there's some ridiculousness that we do in our world and culturally just practices we have that have to change. But I also think it's so important that people see that opportunity on the other side, because it's a little bit easier to run into a lit tunnel than a dark tunnel. So if we want them to go in full, I think we should just try to, if we can, turn on the light. And I think there's just a lot of opportunities for many of us if we think about it. And if you're not sure, and maybe you're just frustrated, ask someone else. That's what I love about social media. That's what I love about a lot of communities that we have. Is sometimes sitting down with someone and saying, I'm completely frustrated. I'm upset about this, upset about that. What can I do? And allow somebody else maybe to give you that idea so that you can see that next move if you're even struggling. Because I understand how it can be a struggling moment at times.
Definitely. Speaking of the holidays, I've been thinking about maybe to those who haven't completely resonated with the animal rights or the ethics of it yet, then just adopt a turkey in their name and be like, hey, I adopted a turkey in your name. And then who knows, maybe they will probably not want to consume one during Thanksgiving because you're like, well, there's this turkey out there that I'm apparently sponsoring. So that's kind of a cheeky way. Yeah.
Yeah, because it makes a good personal connection, mm-hmm. and it creates a well-being kind of care for. And I think naturally a lot of people, they have those things in their hearts. Yeah. Some things in life make us a little bit of a harder outer shell, but if sometimes you can tap into that, people will open up to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with your work with Vegan Mainstream, what kind of mentorship services do you offer to clients? And do you exclusively work with vegan businesses or businesses who are probably not exclusively vegan, but are still, focused on sustainability or working within the community, supporting local? What does it look like?
Yeah, we work with vegans. So that's my big kind of focus. And the reason I make that distinction is because I really think the opportunity is, with vegan skincare, vegan makeup, those, idea brands, and then also with services like vegans who offer fitness support, because often where people struggle is, well, how do I get my nutrition in line with my fitness? And if you have someone who's in a vegan world, they can really make a difference. So helping people who have service-based businesses, maybe people who are health coaches or lifestyle coaches that are vegan, making sure we support them is really key for us. I've been fortunate enough where, we've started to build a solid base around the business. But in the beginning, it was super scary. People are like, what? What do you mean you're going to be like a marketing company? Why would I pay people? I can just jump on social media. It was really hard. And people didn't have budgets.
Yeah.
Small businesses just don't have enough money to do it. So it was hard in the beginning to take this route. But I'm so glad we did, because I really feel like vegans need the support no matter what kind of business they would run. Even if it isn't a business that's directly related to food, or it sounds like what they supply would have had, animal byproducts, animal products in it. Because if you run a yoga studio, you don't see it on the surface. But the reality is, when individuals are vegan, they bring a level of ethics to everything within that business. they start to change everything. So not only the food that's there on the, yoga open house day will be vegan, but the products that they use for cleaning. Maybe even another business that they hire, they may hire somebody who's aligned with their ethics. And what happens is that we kind of make this like ethical, I don't know, I don't have a good analogy for it, but, we start to create this like web that starts to kind of branch out where our ethics and our beliefs are going to permeate through everything we start to do, even the way we start to treat our employees and our freelancers and so forth. And now not everyone wakes up on the right side of the bed, so I don't want to make it sound like every vegan is just so sweet and hugging.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's not what I'm trying to say. And I'm not trying to say I'm the sweetest thing in the world either. But the concept that we can spread veganism and the movement and make a better world by having all different types of businesses, by being a vegan carpenter, by being a vegan landscaper, because someone who's a vegan landscaper, they're going to be concerned about not just how it looks, but how does it displace, you know what I mean? Maybe wildlife, how does it
the
impact?
Little critters who are there in the garden, yeah.
Yeah, so it really allows kind of this movement to grow in so many different dimensions. So that is really what gets me excited about the idea that who we work with are people that can drive change in like all these nooks of really the world. So what we try to do is support them and coach them. I do a lot of coaching services is what we do, which kind of falls into that mentoring side, like you said, where we're sitting down with people and we're helping them build a strategy, because often you have an idea of what you want to do. Often you have the idea that you want to help people, but it's not always clear, like, how do I turn that into a business? Because a business needs to make money. A business needs certain types of structures in it to actually function. And you also want a business to be able to operate without you, working until midnight and 2 a.m. every night. So there are some techniques that we want to make sure that people become aware of, because you may be amazing at making, at knitting sweaters. You may be amazing at yoga, like the example earlier, but being able to have someone either like myself or even my peers out there to help guide you on this business journey part to make sure that you build something sustainable and something that can grow is the key to what we try to do, whether it's through our coaching or building our online communities or even our online courses.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And this is such an underrated tool that you are offering, that I think the reason why I say underrated is that we didn't realize that we needed it. And now that we know, it's like, whoa, this is so important. And a lot of people who are really connecting with the ethics and are wanting to create products that align with that, they're seeing a void that needs to be filled, and you did that beautifully. And thank you for creating such a mission-driven business. But speaking of businesses, this is a topic that I've been also thinking about quite a bit, is that phrase, there's no ethical consumption within capitalism. And I really want to go into that with you on your opinions on the vegan ethic, the whole equitable society, everyone on the same playing field and everyone is has access to the same resources. What is your response to that critique that it's still capitalism, we're still functioning with that capitalist society? So how does a business, like a profit-minded business who's still putting out, vegan friendly ethical products, but we need money to run. So how does that fit into this criticism and at least the ethical consumption that you are looking to drive with the work that you do? I know there was a lot in there.
Oh, no, this is fine, because I think it's a good question to have. I think it's a good debate and challenge, because any system, any approach can become corrected. Yeah. Any kind of way of doing things, even the most utopia designed system can at any point lose its way. So I do think it's important for us to question what we do. I do think it's important for us to say, are we doing it in an ethical way? And what I would probably say from my perspective is that there's probably two things to think about when we think about this debate. Number one, to change this world, we're going to need more than one person and one idea. So changing may mean that we do need people who are creating this new space of where we could go, but you're also going to need people who can start where we are today. So making capitalism better, working within that structure so it aligns with our ethics, I think is important, because the reality is I got to buy toothpaste next week.
Yeah.
The reality is, you know what I mean? I need laundry detergent. There's things that are needed today, and they're individuals that are not necessarily on board for veganism yet, meaning they're not ready to wear the t-shirt, they're not ready to, claim that. However, they are willing to go to a vegan restaurant. They are willing to choose a vegan brand over a non-vegan brand. And I believe the animals that we save in that process is so important. We can't wait until we get to that utopia land and then everyone's saved, because I don't know what the time's going to be, but there's a lot of time between where we are today and where we can move the society there. And I believe having businesses that can play a role now, having businesses that can disrupt the supply chains that we have in place right now, having businesses that can displace on shelves vegan options so that when you walk in, there's an option, is amazing. And I know for some people, they may not remember, veganism when it was really, really crunchy, when the vegan products were in the corner and dusty. And you pick them up and you're like, this is expired. Because it's been sitting there. Yeah. It's amazing when we go into stores these days, how many options are available. And
it is overwhelming.
Yes, but it wasn't like that even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that definitely 10 years ago. And I'm not saying we're done, because, it's still like one or two. But
it's better than zero.
Yes. But we've opened up a whole new way of moving our society and saving animals today. And also, I believe running a profitable business is so important, because right now we still all have rent to pay, mortgages, light bills to pay. And what I would love to be able to do is make sure that money that I send out into the world, that money that comes into my bank account, is as aligned with my ethics as possible. So therefore, having businesses that I can buy from, businesses that I can support, having money that comes through my business that I can donate to a nonprofit, or donating my time to a nonprofit, or volunteering and being on the board. All of these possibilities often come from having a profitable business, because a business that doesn't generate enough income doesn't necessarily allow it to grow. Yeah. And what I don't want to have is the non-vegan businesses are growing and our vegan businesses aren't growing. It's just, there's only so much shelf space. There's only so many, streets, like Main Street's only got so many buildings on it, wherever you live. Yeah. And I think it would be beautiful if 50% of them were vegan, as opposed to, us not participating in that. So I think it's really important that we participate, but I also think it's important for us to participate where it makes sense. Yeah. If you're a person that struggles with it, I'm not trying to tell you become a consumer. Yeah. I need you to start buying products. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's so many lanes for change that we need to fill them up. Mm-hmm. We need everyone in these lanes, so we're just moving forward. And therefore, this huge world that we live in will start to spin a little different. Yeah. Move a little different and operate a little different. And even conversations are different about veganism today. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that has to do with us working within some of the systems that we currently have and not being afraid of those systems, because I think it's awesome when you can employ somebody in a vegan business, and therefore they don't have to work at a company that's not aligned with their ethics to be able to take care of their family. Yeah. And I think it's hard to say, if you're an ethical vegan, you wouldn't work at that place. I don't want to put that judgment on people. Yeah. I really want people. Yeah. I want people to have opportunities, and if we don't give them places to work, I think they're going to struggle. If we don't give them places to align their ethics with the current system, I think people will feel displaced, and I don't want us to displace individuals. I really feel like there's a room in the movement for everyone.
Totally. And yeah, that makes very clear sense, because yeah, it's easy to be on the outside and say, oh, if you're an ethical vegan, you wouldn't work at a supermarket stacking animal products on the shelves. But who knows, maybe they applied to a bunch of other, or like the limited vegan businesses out there who probably didn't have the capacity to take this person on. And we, like you said, we got bills to pay, we have rent, we have companion animals to take care of, and it's challenging. So yeah, the other thing that really resonated with me, and it's something that I also advocate for a lot, is yes, we are trying to work within a system that we have been provided, but we're also trying to change that system. It's not one or the other. So there are some people operating from within to disrupt what's existing, but also other people in the meantime building a new system that is going to offer this equitable framework. We might not know what that looks like right now, but you know, we can't just keep waiting to have that perfect blueprint and build it. We need to be creative and sometimes spontaneous. So yeah,
absolutely. And be willing to see this as a journey, because some of this is not, the destinations are not 100% defined. Yeah. Because we don't control all the outcomes. We don't control, for many cases, we don't even control some of these supply chains. So therefore, we have to really make sure that the journey we're on is a journey of truth and a journey of change and a journey of, the ethics that we want to get to, and appreciate all those wins along the way. Even if our destination may feel a little more utopia. I mean, think about it. I called my business Vegan Mainstream. Like, I want the world to be vegan. Like, that's what I want, period.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
it's the only stream. It's not even like mainstream, just vegan only stream.
Pretty much.
It's the only thing that exists.
Yeah, so it flips almost the other way. Like, you're not vegan? Really? Yeah. That's interesting. Why not? Like, it's almost like it's the other way of the concept. So I get the dream, and I understand that, and I subscribe to it myself. But I also believe that I want to be a part of it. And it's just one of the lanes that I've chosen is the business lane. And I think it should be open to everyone. And as vegans, we have to be very careful of shutting down opportunities based on how we see that ethical journey going, because it's difficult. A lot of these changes, a lot of the things we have to do. But I think we can get there if we just keep supporting each other and having these dialogues. That's why I said in the beginning, sometimes you need someone to say, well, wait a minute. Are you still on that ethical path? Did you lose your way? And sometimes we do lose our way. Yeah. And we need help. We need someone to say something or put something in our ear and remind us. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because we're also still human. Yeah. And, we're still growing as people. Yeah. So we got to give ourselves a chance to grow and then grow and implement.
Yeah. And with that idea of sometimes you may lose sight of the initial ethics that drove you in the first place, that's often a criticism that vegan businesses, especially, vegan meat, I call them upgrades to the animal products. They often, sell out to or are bought out by a larger corporation that also, owns several other animal exploitative ventures, or they accept investments from these larger corporations. So what are your thoughts on that? Or do you have any opinions on or concerns of up and coming newer businesses having that risk of being bought out by these larger corporations, and at the end of the day may not create that scale of change that we are aspiring to?
Yeah. Well, I would say a couple of things. Number one, I always got opinions about all this stuff. So I think it's important to talk about these things because I feel that sometimes when we look at a problem, we look at a challenge, we look at it as the consumer. And then sometimes we have to put our business hat on, or our strategy hat on, or a person who thinks about the future and says, well, what does it mean when this company is potentially bought out by a non-vegan company? It's one thing when they're bought out and all their products are discontinued and they're stifled. But that's not what we're seeing. For a lot of these brands, we're seeing them get more shelf space. For a lot of these brands, we're seeing them expand their product lines. For a lot of these businesses, we're actually seeing growth. So I want to make sure that for some people who are having a hard time with what's happening is to make sure you're looking at the reality of the situation, because there's an emotional piece that even gets me at times when I read them, because I'm like, oh, yeah. You want to keep it purely vegan, and especially me with my business hat on.
Yeah, and it's like you don't know some of the money that you're spending on this product, like it might trickle up to the non-vegan overlord, which we don't necessarily want.
Definitely, we don't want that. But what I also don't want to happen is that brand can't grow and it goes out of business. Mm-hmm. Because if it goes out of business, we have big trouble. Because the other brand, guess what? It doesn't need to change if there's no demand for these items. It doesn't need to change if people aren't saying, I want cleaner products on the shelf. I want products where I can read the label. Because it's not even just the meat industry. It's also for hair care, makeup. I mean, some of this stuff, when you read it, you're like, what in the world? And also the whole proprietary ingredient. You're like, I don't even know what I'm buying. I don't even know what I'm putting on my body. It's ridiculous. So the idea that by having these businesses in these spaces and get big enough, sometimes what's happening is we're showing that the demand is big enough so that these bigger companies have to change. Now, the fastest way for them to change is to acquire as opposed to start from scratch. Mm-hmm. But that demand is real, and that demand is something for us to celebrate. And if we look at a lot of these brands and we've seen them continue on that growth trajectory, I think we have to remember that, because with those items being sold, with someone going physically in the grocery store and buying these other brands, as opposed to the non-vegan brand, in a sense, we have money that's going towards a vegan, a vegan concept, but we also have is that animals are getting saved. Now, are we fixing the whole problem? No, because we didn't get those other brands to stop. Yeah, they're not there yet, and also they're still a little bit ignorant because they still think what they're doing is appropriate, and it's not. But I don't want us to mix up the idea of what does progress look like, because progress doesn't look the same as the solution. Progress doesn't look the same as the destination. And I think sometimes we mix up where we want to be, where, yes, I want 80% of the products on the shelf to be vegan. That process means these businesses need funding. And in some cases, the businesses have to go. Say it again?
That needs to be on a shirt. Progress doesn't look like the solution.
Because it doesn't sometimes, because it looks like, that's not what we want. But that's sometimes the steps you have to go through to even get there. Yeah. And it was great. I was presenting with Miyoko once at the Animal Rights Conference, and we were talking about this as well.
No big deal. Huh? You were just presenting with Miyoko. No big deal.
It's just, that's true. I didn't mean it that way.
No. I'm just messing with you.
But it was amazing because she talked about this issue as well. And she talked about how the funding's often not available for these brands to go to those next levels. You know, they need an investment at a significant level for them to compete, because it's not cheap to be able to get shelf space in grocery stores. It's very difficult to do distribution where, you know, we all walk into our local grocery store and we all have the same items available. There's a reason why it's like, what do you mean you don't have that? I have that at my store. Like, it costs money to be fully stocked in so many places. And therefore, I don't want to show disappointment to brands that want to grow big. And what they find is the only options they have is to stay the same, or they're capped, or they have to take investments from people who are maybe outside of that vegan space, because I really feel like we need change. We have to save animals, and we have to put the right perspective in place to figure out our preferences versus what is actually saving animals today, what is actually the options on a person's table. And if they don't have a vegan option on the table, it's hard to hold that against them and say, well, I wish they had one. They wish it too, for many of the brands I've heard, but they didn't have it. So therefore, if we put ourselves in their shoes as opposed to like a consumer shoe, then we might have to make a different decision, because those are a lot of people that we employ, you know, those companies that they employ, excuse me. There's a lot of marketing that they've been doing, you know, being on ads and TV that we've all been so proud of, you know, and we want that to continue.
Totally. Yeah, and like, who knows, one day we'll see all of these vegan companies grow, that they are going to start acquiring the non-vegan brands, and then we'll flip the switch. So we're on route to that, hopefully, whatever that looks like. So about the consumer and voting with the dollar concept, there's also the issue of government subsidies that are disproportionately propping up the animal exploitative industries like animal agriculture and dairy and all of that. So how do you think we can amplify that consumer power such that the government funding is going to reflect that appropriately, rather than, because currently it looks like even though people are more people might be buying the plant milk and all of the dairy is going to waste, they're still being bailed out. So there's still no downside to overproducing outside of the ethical concerns. They can still overproduce and still get the money for it by reporting a loss or whatever. So how can we really get, as consumers, push for this kind of a reflection of, hey, this is where the money is going and these are the industries that you should be supporting, and not those that are hurting the planet?
Yeah, that one's a hard one, only because the systems that are in place are so archaic. They've been around for so long, and the people that keep those systems alive are very well funded, have been doing it a very long time, and it's a big system to break down. So I say that not to say there isn't hope, but I say that to say that I don't think it's going to be one or two things. I really feel like it's going to be multiple ways to break down that barrier. It's going to be multiple things that have to happen. And what I'm hoping is it's not unfortunate that it's time, because sometimes it's just time that we need, because you need new people in these roles. You need people with new perspective. You need, new people being elected into roles, so people going into government positions and so forth. So some of this is within reach, because the idea is that we do need to get active. We do need to make sure that we're not just picketing, but what we're also doing is inspiring. We also know who controls or who is voting on these measures. And sometimes it's starting local. It's sometimes making sure that in your local community, what can you do? Now, you're not going to impact maybe the national subsidies, but locally, there's a lot of decisions that are made on how money is spent. There's a lot of bills that come out of the government, and there's questions on how it's spent. And if you're not showing up at the meetings, if you're not pressing upon the individuals that unfortunately run agriculture, which I think is so interesting, that agriculture and, like agriculture includes meats and things like that. And you're like, what in the world? But I'll leave that to the side for a minute.
That's another 2-hour podcast.
Yes, I know. You'd never be done. But I think we have to figure out our role. But I really think demand speaks the most. I think most of these businesses, the only reason they're buying these vegan companies is because they see the demand and they see the profit. So I do think we have to make sure that we manage demand as a group, that we really think about, just like we want to show up when we disagree with a bill and we all come together at the same time, we all get on the Capitol steps or we all show up, we have to do the same thing for brands and businesses. We have to decide what brands we want to support, and we got to show up for them. We got to pull our money together. We have to pull our resources together so that they are supported and so that the demand shifts, because many of these people, they're not so dedicated to this or that. They're dedicated to the bottom line. So let's use that to our benefit is one piece I would say. And then the other thing I would say about many of these subsidies and these challenges is let's put our brightest minds on these things. I think sometimes we're waiting for the world to change or waiting for the government to do better. And in many cases, the government's not going to get there because the government's going to take 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, 10, 20, maybe even 30 years to get there because you need that generation turnover. So the question is, let's be innovative. And that's the thing I think has been so interesting about products that people are using now, where people are using what they call pineapple leather, where people are using mushroom, to create that leather. And the idea is that instead of us just going into kind of that activist mode that, driving change as far as legislative change, I think it's interesting to make sure that people are dedicating their time into finding better products, better solutions, things that are sustainable. Because if they're sustainable, then I don't want to say we won't need the subsidies, but that's the problem. The reason that they have the subsidies is because they're not sustainable. So I think we want to make sure we show up with the right answer, because the answer is creating products, creating services, creating supply chains, and creating places where, we can operate in a cost structure that can make these businesses and make these environments viable. So if we get rid of the subsidies, not only will we not necessarily be on an even playing field, we'll be ahead. Will be potentially in those places. Because it frustrates me. I don't know if this happens to you, but when you think about recycling is such an interesting industry because depending on where you live, what can be recycled is so, one of the folks was telling me here, we can't recycle color glass bottles. We can recycle clear glass bottles. And I'm like, what? I think I'm doing great because I'm throwing everything in the little can.
You're making it worse because it clogs up the entire system. And it's there's a product where it says recyclable, but it's only a part, only the cap can be recycled, not the rest of the cart. So you need to take everything off. And yeah.
So I say that to say there's so much innovation that's needed, even in the things that we think we're doing well.
Yeah,
absolutely. Even if we move the money from here to there, the reality is we have to build a supply chain that is sustainable, regardless of the subsidies. We have to support that. We need people coming out of school and going into those. We need universities to have degrees where they're creating degrees. Because I know someone who's getting a degree in sustainability, I believe. Mm-hmm. Actually, one of my new team members is doing that. That's amazing. That wasn't, at least when I went to school, that wasn't, a topic that, not even let alone a class you could take, let alone something you can measure in. So I really feel like we have to make sure that we're creating the ecosystem to support what we're trying to drive forward. Because without all those pieces, we may not be strong enough to stand up against this institutional approach. Even if the subsidies were moved, or the subsidies were reduced, or the subsidies didn't exist anymore, we still need our own strong and sustainable ecosystem so we can operate not only successfully, but operate with our ethics intact.
Yeah. Wow. Very, very well said. And I want to be respectful of your time as well, as you just have so many incredible thoughts and ideas, and it's such an enriching conversation. So I'll keep this as brief as I can, because I would love to hear your 2 cents or piece of advice for self-starters who might not have a business background. They don't have business degrees, but they have a vision, they have an idea, and they want to launch their own business, support their local communities. What kind of advice would you have for them? What sort of a mentor would you aspire to be for such businesses as well?
Yeah, I think for anyone who's getting started or has an idea or thinks that they're going to jump on a journey like this, I think it's key to map out a plan. And I know not everyone loves planning, and some people want to do it ad hoc and figure it out. And that doesn't mean along the journey it's so rigid that you don't get to respond or react. But it's kind of like, I use the analogy a lot where I talk about directions. Like if I need to get somewhere, I don't just get in the car and hope I'm going to get downtown. Like I actually look at directions on my phone, or if this is back in the day, we would print them out. And have a sense of where you're going. You know you got to make so many lefts and so many rights to get there. But once you get in the car, you could take the scenic route. You could take the non-expressway route. You could do this, you could do that. And I think that's the same thing when you think about a plan for your business, is sitting down and saying, where do I want to be 12 months from now? What would that look like? And maybe that's not where I have, I'm in every store. Maybe that's not where I have a ton of employees. And I say that because I don't want everyone to think you have to be a corporation to be successful. You can be a solopreneur and amazingly successful. You can be a small business with like 5 people and have an amazing life, contribute to the world, donate, and do so many beautiful things, because bigger is not necessarily better. What we're really trying to build is sustainable businesses and, meet those dreams that you have. So figuring out where you want to be 12 months from now, and then starting to think about not just who you are and what you want to sell, but what are you delivering on? What's the result that you're offering? And what's the unique experience that your customers are going to feel and be able to, kind of get their hands around because they chose your brand? Because often when we build businesses, it's very easy to build a business that looks 10% different than something else or is similar. Or as vegans, we love to build businesses sometimes because our passion and our hearts are so big that we're like, I just want to help everybody and help, just help people. And that's a beautiful place to start from. But you need to define, how do you do it? How is your help different from other people? And when you say help, what's the result that they're going to get? Where can you actually take them? Because I think it's important for a business to deliver on a specific type of promise. And I don't mean a promise like something that you can't deliver on. I don't mean if you're selling a product, you're delivering on confidence. Like, whoa, let's not go too far. Like, you're just trying to get someone, trying to give me some moisturizer for my face. You're giving me confidence. I don't want to go too far on that. But if you are selling a vegan moisturizer, or if you're selling lipstick, or if you're selling vegan shoes, or if you're a health coach or a fitness coach, what is the thing that you can deliver on? And what can you walk a person through, and documenting that? And then making sure financially your business makes sense on paper. In our heads, it's very difficult to remember things. And if you ever read anything about when people talk about eyewitnesses, how they notoriously change their stories, or things kind of what they repeat back is not even exactly what they remember.
Yeah.
Our memory can play tricks on ourselves. And for a business plan to be in your head, you don't want your brain to play a trick on you. What you really want to make sure is you write it down and say, this is my business, this is how I get results, and financially, this is how it will be sound, so that not only can it be profitable, because if it's not profitable on paper, it's not going to miraculously become profitable in real life. But how does that happen? And then how do I have a life in the meantime? How do I make sure I'm not, mean to everybody while I run this business?
Yeah.
How do I make sure that I'm happy or I'm satisfied or I'm able to do good things in the world? And then the last thing is think about your impact, because I think sometimes people mix up their impact with their financials. Mm-hmm. And I think you need a financial goal and a very clear one, even if you're just going to make $10,000 next year. Even if, because sometimes everyone's like, I made 6 figures and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It ain't going to be that. Make 10,000, make 20,000. Replace your current income with a new business. That's a beautiful thing, because you went from 0 to something. Yeah. That's big. Yeah. It's a huge accomplishment. And thinking about what that is financially, but then putting that on paper and then saying, what's my impact goal? It's different. So they don't have to compete with each other. And if your impact goal is the amount of money you donate, great. If your impact goal is how you want to volunteer your time outside of your business, great. You're going to get on a board, great. Or is your impact goal the number of people you help? Then let's design your business so it's profitable and it allows you to impact. And in that way, these things work together, as opposed to, if I give it away for free, I can help everyone, but then you won't be in business long.
Yeah.
Let's get that balance
that's
in
a
place.
dilemma that a lot of vegans tend to have as well. It's like, I just want to help them. It's okay, I'll help you for free. I'll spew out free advice. But then, unfortunately, it's not going to be sustainable in the long run if it's a business. So with that, looking out into the future, what does an ethical framework of a vegan market, I guess, what does that look like in society? Just a market run by ethical vegan businesses. How do you see that as?
I really feel it's more like it's like an ecosystem. It's a place where people can find great employment. It's a great place where people can get training. It's a great place where people can go for community activities. So the idea is that this kind of ecosystem, even though it feels like it has that business hat on it, a piece of it really needs to have a societal impact. Yeah. It really has to create this kind of community around it, so that the community flourishes with the business intact, because these businesses are here. So I really see it as an opportunity for us to create businesses that are in multiple industries, because often some of the products that are sold and some of the unfortunate practices are in place because they're a part of the same supply chain. And if we only fix this piece, you're still having animals hurt for other items. A lot of times people think everything's a byproduct, and often it's not a byproduct. It's in its own industry. Yeah. So we have to make sure that we are present. And that's where I see the future. I see us being present in all these industries. I see us being in stores, and when you're walking around, you're not just in one aisle or one section or at the bottom shelf. I really see it that, it is the viable option. It's the option that when someone's sitting there and they kind of got their hand out, they're picking between vegan options, as opposed to it's vegan and non-vegan. I think that binary world is really where we're headed. Moving away from that binary world is really where we're headed. That what's going to happen is, being just a vegan product, it's not going to be enough of an edge. And I think that's a amazing thing, an amazing place. And I know it freaks some people out, but I think that's an awesome thing.
That you're just forcing one thing, and that just becomes, it becomes like a market monopoly. You're forcing this one specific lifestyle on other people, which is a whole different rant. Absolutely. Also.
Absolutely, yeah. Because what I need, vegan products for my hair, is different than other people need. Even if I just take my family, what my mother needs and what I need are different. What my husband needs and I need are different. And then we're still going across different cultures. veganism has to open up to all cultures.
Yeah.
We have to have products and services that match all these different cultures and these different needs and feelings and approaches. We can't make veganism this kind of one thing. And that's why I think the vegan business world can be and can go, because we're starting to see more and more, women start businesses in this vegan space. We're starting to see more people see an opportunity where they can build a business that's not only vegan, but supports other causes. I know someone who built a business because their son has autism, and they want to make sure that there are places that will employ somebody who has autism, that creates that environment. And I think it's such a beautiful thing where we start to understand that our vegan world can be so much bigger than just the label or the logo on the backside of the product. Mm-hmm. The idea is that this vegan world is really going to be a space where we create choice, where we create options, where we create a place where people can live in. And it's not just the status quo that we're forced into. We really have more choice, more options, and the business world opens up beyond just the financial side, but we start to think about our social responsibility and understanding that we can be socially responsible and profitable and care about the environment and take care of each other.
Wow, that was a wonderful answer to that question, and so optimistic, so hopeful, and I think very much achievable with all of the innovation and the creative spaces that people are occupying to bring about that world. So yeah, before I let you go, is there anything that you would like to add? How can folks find you, support the remarkable work that you're doing? Let us know how we can help you with all of your ventures.
Absolutely. We're on, all the social media channels as Vegan Mainstream. So, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. So if you want to look me up, Stephanie Redcross, it's fairly easy to find me. It might have my full name, Stephanie Redcross West. By the way, it's pretty easy to find me. I love connecting with people, seeing how they're doing and hearing their stories. And then obviously you can always come to our website, veganmainstream.com. We try to offer not only, we have our paid services, but we also try to offer some free things. We do like free webinars for people. We do interviews. We interview different vegan business owners. I interview somebody every single week. So we have a little podcast for that, which I love because it's so inspiring.
What's
and
the podcast called?
It's called Pivot.
Okay.
And what it's about is the idea that, we all run businesses and create businesses, but we have to pivot at times. Yeah. We have to make changes. We have to grow. So we often talk to people about how they've grown or built their business, and being able to hear vegans in all walks of life is so much fun.
Awesome. We'll be sure to link all of that in our show notes so folks can find you, and any future ethical business or soon-to-be entrepreneur out there, if they want to reach out to you, we'll make sure they have the resources to do so. So thank you so much, Stephanie. You are such a joy to chat with, and I'm so thankful for all the work that you do. And hopefully we'll get to meet in person one day. But till then, I'm just thrilled for the opportunity to spread the word about the work that you do and champion all of the local and non-local vegan businesses and help them stay afloat, help them grow, power through, and create that ethical, plant-powered vegan world that we are aspiring for. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was wonderful. I have so thoroughly enjoyed myself. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. A pleasure is all mine. I am so amazed by how Stephanie clearly articulates the need to balance practicality with our vision for a vegan world. The scale of change that is needed cannot be accomplished overnight, but that doesn't mean we can't make significant progress, right? And I invite you all to take Stephanie's advice and implement your own forms of creative activism in your workplaces. Plus, if you have ambitions and dreams to start your own vegan business, definitely consider reaching out to Stephanie for her expert guidance and support. We will be sure to include all of the relevant links for Vegan Mainstream in the show notes below. If you enjoyed this episode and our podcast, please rate and review the Animal Liberation Hour, as it helps others find us more easily, and the more people who find out about us, the more they can be inspired by our guests and turn that inspiration into actionable change for the animals. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Animal Activism Mentorship, where you can keep up with the podcast and all things AAM, including our upcoming week of animal rights action in Atlanta, Georgia, from February 19th till 26th. So if you want more information on that, be sure to check out our events page on Facebook. You can also hop in on our clubhouse rooms and join our stimulating discussions about all things animal rights, effective advocacy, and more. If you like what we do at the Animal Liberation Hour and at Animal Activism Mentorship, you can support us through our Patreon at patreon.com/Animal Activism Mentorship. It helps keep us going and amplifying the voices of our community members. One more reminder that you can sign up for a free mentor to help you with your activism at animalactivismmentorship.com. We hope you will join our positive community of creative, inspiring, and dedicated activists in our move for animal liberation. We will catch you on our next episode. Until next time.
Hey everybody, Trey here. This episode concludes Season 1 of the Animal Liberation Hour. Whether you listen to one episode or all 10, we want to thank you for tuning in. We hope Season 1 has inspired you to take action for animals in your own way, and we hope this has been a great resource for you. In addition to thanking our listeners, we want to thank all of our guests, Yuri, Katie, Justin, Jake, Rich, Tiffany, Crystal, Chris, Meredith, and Stephanie for joining us for our very first season. If you missed an episode, do yourself a favor and go back and listen to what all of these amazing activists had to say. We are in the works of planning Season 2 for 2022, but we could really use your support. You can become a patron at patreon.com/Animal Activism Mentorship for as little as $2 a month, and it goes a long way. Not only does your contribution go toward making the Animal Liberation Hour possible, but it helps us in everything we do at Animal Activism Mentorship. Mentoring new activists, organizing multi-day activism events, hosting free workshops, and much more. On behalf of my co-host Shriya and everybody at Animal Activism Mentorship, thanks again, and we hope to see you in 2022 for Season 2. Until next time.